to introduce you guys to O'Shea Bowens, which I met at ITWeb. He is part of our InfoSec WhatsApp group, I was very fortunate to meet him. He is highly skilled in DFIR. He's fun to be with at a conference. Many laughs, but I'm going to leave it up to him to tell you all about himself, where he's from, what he does, and a little bit of your credentials. People want to know how elite you are.
Well, let's see, one current credential and then 50. I'm going through 508 right now. It's actually funny when I explain that to people. Like, they're like, "Well, did you go to school? Like, what certs do you have?" I'm like, "Well, college dropout, not super proud of it, but I left college to join a startup. So, like, 2 years into my degree program, I ended up leaving school. There was a startup in the summer, and then after the summer ended, and school session came back around, I had to make a choice, kind of stay with what I was already doing or just, go back to school. And I kind of liked making money, so I stayed with it. A bit about me. From Dallas, Texas, originally. Got into, I guess, computers really kind of around like sixth grade. We had a computer class. I went to a school that's basically it's a program that's year-round school. So like it sounds, you go to school year-round, but you have like 3-week sessions that you break for. So you break every like 3 weeks. I mean, you break every like 2 or 3 months. You break for 3 weeks, and then you come back to school. So you're constantly going. But it was a small computer class. Got introduced to computer programming around like 12. Still kind of suck at it, honestly, but I'm decent at writing code. I'm just getting to the point in my life where I trust what I write to push it into prod. So that's the best way I can describe it. So around that time, I started hanging out. Like, if you remember AOL, this is around the time AOL was still pretty big. I started looking at forums and trying to understand. Really, the thing was trying to understand how computer games were working, because I wanted to like get unlimited ammo, like in Oregon Trail. I don't know if you remember that game, but trying to get like unlimited ammo and unlimited lives. And then that introduced me to different forums, and then this curiosity about really like how the internet works. Like I was always like curious, like how am I talking to someone that's in another city? Like, how am I chatting with them like online? And then that kind of kicked off understanding networking, understanding like internet backbone. Mm-hmm. And then around the time I was like 15, 16, started, lurking around on different hacker forums and things like that. The normal stuff. Did stupid stuff when you were a kid. And then, around the time I was like 21, 22, 23, something like that. Took a job at AT&T, like a first professional like networking job. After the startup, I joined, got sold, and then went into security around 2009, I believe, and been in InfoSec ever since then. So did a networking job for about 7 months as I was looking for a security job, and been in security, ever since then. So mostly around like SOC work, incident response, threat hunting, and threat intel, and not to throw out buzzwords. But it started from like as a SOC monkey, staring at the screen. I think, which is a great place to start to really understand kind of to get that holistic view of how events affect your organization, and then understanding how you correlate logs, understanding how you actually leverage the tools, how the tools actually work from an engineering architecture perspective, any type of SIM, and just kind of kept moving on. Worked with a guy that was really sick with forensics, and that kind of got me interested in like host forensics and understanding how I can incorporate that into my work as an analyst. And then that led to IR, and then IR kind of led to threat hunting, and then here we are now.
Yeah, it's always surprising to me how we start out. Now, I started in DF first, moved over to IR, and then got bitten by the bug. I wanted to understand how red teamers think, and then I wanted to understand how blue teams build the networks, maintain the networks, and protect it. So this has led me on the trail that I want to know it all. I want to collect every portion of information that I can to be fully rounded and completed in my experience and knowledge.
So you want to be like a master Jedi?
Exactly. Everyone laughs at me when I say that, but I want to be a master Jedi in everything InfoSec. From DFIR to malware to SOC to NOC to anything that I can think of, because I find it better to understand all the sides. Because I found with like red teaming, my understanding or my thought process goes about what will I leave behind, exploiting what I know, what I've learned from DFIR, knowing how things are logged, knowing where I'm going to trigger alarms, and then using that to formulate my plan.
That's gonna. So what does it look like to become like full circle then? Like at what point do you know like, hey, now I'm full circle. Like I have XYZ. Like I'm good with reverse engineering. I'm good with malware. I'm good with forensics. I'm good with.
Realistically, never.
That's a good answer.
It's the ultimate conundrum. You will never know enough because things change fast pace. I always say to people, the masterminds behind these APTs and organized crimes constantly evolve. So I mean, we're constantly evolving as well, but it feels like we're 1 or 2 steps behind. So we're constantly chasing the white rabbit.
I think I gave a talk about this at one point. I wish it was like a small, like a stand-up talk, like 10 or 15 minutes. I really should dig more into this. Honestly, I think it's just time. Like, in my mind, like if you've ever done like any like breach investigations, or you've gotten if you gotten your hands on any type of custom malware that was inside of your organization, and you get around to reverse engineering it, or you maybe are able to identify that specific malware by certain characteristics, and then you start asking around on different forums or kind of like on the underground scene, and you get in touch with individual authors. Like I wouldn't say pleasure, but I've had the time. Like I remember doing a breach at one point, a breach investigation. We were able to grab a sample of the malware, and it was basically kind of an offshoot of another crypto miner that was actually running that was fairly popular, like about a year and a half ago. So this is before crypto miners started blowing up. This is at the time no one really knew what the hell was going on. Like maybe I'd say like maybe Q2 of 2018, maybe like Q2 or Q1 if I remember right. But basically, that particular variant, I was able to just ask a few questions around the characteristics that I saw in regards to how it loaded itself and how it was actually side loaded into like processes. And some guys online were like, basically, oh, well, we think this guy actually kind of maybe help write it, so talk to him. And as you're talking to him, like you're like, hey, what are you up to today? You're like chatting with these guys, and they're like, oh, basically, I'm setting up a support website for my crypto miner and. Pretty much looking to add some more characteristics. I don't know, maybe go to sleep or something, and then there's some other like features I'd like to add. But that's all he was doing. that crypto miner malware was like his whole like life at the time because that was generating income for him, right? So that's like literally all he focused on, like 24 hours, out of the day. Not 24 hours, he has to sleep, I'd imagine, or that group he works with has to sleep. But I think the difference with them versus us is like they have all day to do this.
Exactly.
Like when you're working as a business, when you're working for an organization or you're working for a company, like you have other interests that are happening. Like I work for myself, so I had to like when I started my company, I love to do the technical stuff, of course, but at the same time, I had to look at marketing, I had to look at social media stuff for my company. I had to look at like review business records. I had to like get on the call with get on phone calls with potential clients. So like that's like 2 or 3 hours out of the day versus someone else that's spending 10 hours just enhancing the malware that they have. So I think that's kind of the difference there.
You're preaching to the choir, as you know that I'm one of 2 partners in a company, and I've just realized that the business side of things can take something that you'll think takes just an hour can evolve to take a whole day, and it's a priority to sort out. So I don't think people really realize when you start a startup that you have to do the technical whilst you have to do the business side as well.
Yeah, luckily, my wife is in finance, so and she's luckily like really smart. So I'm not sure why she's married to me, but when like the taxes, like things like taxes take like forever to like sort out. Like I thought I was like, okay, I'll get this done like a day or two. It took me almost like a week and a half just to like sort out all of my taxes, like documentation, all my records, and get all that stuff sent over. Like it's a lot of stuff. Like
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's fun to start your own thing, but it is a lot of work.
So you say that you're currently doing the SANS 508, the GCFA certification. Have you done the course yet, or are you still planning to?
So I didn't actually do the course. I just bought the test like outright.
Oh, you're challenging the exam.
Yeah, I didn't because I mean it's one again. I work for when you're working for yourself. It's trying to justify $4,000. Nothing to get SANS. But trying to justify $4,000 for like your startup is a lot, But I figured, if I can at least do the practice test, I can at least derive, okay, what areas do I need to focus on? Like I feel like I've been doing this fairly long, right? Like I spent a decent part of my life researching and looking at new techniques. and understanding, different tool sets, the new tool sets that are out from an open source perspective. So I feel like if I see a tool that I can recognize, it's not that hard for me to go research that and kind of make my notes there. And then the techniques that they've mentioned in the SANS course, this one's by Rob Lee, and it's super awesome. Like I've learned a lot that I didn't know, or just something like stuff I didn't think about, like different ways to leverage like Windows internals. Like there's things I didn't think about that are there. But so I basically, I just paid for the test because it's cheaper. So hopefully I pass, but I feel like I should pass.
No, definitely. No, I am busy studying for my 504, which is Hacker Tools and Techniques and Incident Response. And I mean, it's triggered some interesting research for me, which I'll be hopefully presenting soon. But again, the forensic side has come out and asking exactly how does Mimikatz interact with alsace.exe. I'm curious as to see exactly what it does. So that's what I've been busy with. But I find the SANS training very interesting. Even just when you get the material, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, I think the next time I do one, I'll likely go in person because I did 504 a few years back, but I did that in person, and I still talk with some of the people I met in the class, and this was maybe 4 years ago, but I still communicate with them. So you meet some pretty awesome people in your class too.
No, definitely. So let's get down to the down and dirty, yeah? So what incident can you tell us about that's probably been very interesting without divulging client information? Just some technical aspects on why it was interesting and what you guys found and the modus operandi.
Yeah. Well, I'd say interesting / frustrating, right? At one point, this was years back, I was working with a company. So the structure was essentially, I was in SOC, leading the team, and we had 2 or 3 individuals working from an incident response perspective, kind of makeshift incident response, basically. But we also had an intel team, and we noticed some weird stuff happening inside of a customer network. And, they call us in, so we're running through, we had some of the individuals in the SOC begin to triage level 1, level 2 type of things. They're providing us logs. We're creating correlation rules. We're looking for other indicators of compromise at that point, because we knew a certain, this web server had been owned pretty much. But the idea was, okay, well, what other accounts would possibly leverage on the web server? Because you could essentially see that individual pivot from the Apache box into basically an application server that we were running. But the problem was we weren't sure if he was actually, did he leverage, he or she, I don't know if it was a man or a woman at this point, but I don't know, we didn't know if they actually leveraged or created some other user account and then was able to authenticate to the application server, because that was the main gap. It was well, how are they actually authenticating there? Because what was happening was we were seeing some funky stuff happen around our API configs. It was almost like they were trying to change the API configs so they could dump in some other domain or some other IP, and then make API calls directly outside of our environment and kind of slide under the radar. Which at the time I hadn't seen anything like that. And the weird thing was we weren't really particularly able to identify how he or she was moving from web server to user's box to the application server. At this point, so we deployed a pretty decent amount of tools. We were running memory captures on one of the boxes on the web server. We had segmented that from the network. We didn't actually take it off of the network. We had a duplicate server running, so we basically copied that server, threw up the second Apache box. And at this time, we're still trying to sort out how the individual actually authenticated to this workstation. Because there's one workstation he's seen to authenticate to, and he wasn't hitting the DC a lot. So this wasn't an individual that was actually leveraging the DC to actually make new accounts and leverage those. And he wasn't necessarily going for multiple, administrative accounts. It was like he found one kind of magically. And through information sharing with other companies that were in the same kind of vector as us, we were able to speak with one particular company that had seen variants of this particular malware at that time. And they were able to point us to an Intel provider. And the Intel provider was able to provide pretty much chat sessions from who they believed the individual responsible for it was. And the individual responsible for it at the time was chatting with someone that apparently was giving him almost inside information. So when I say inside information, it was pretty much this SIM is monitoring this part of the network, but this is an old account that an application developer had and that's still up. So here are the creds to this account. And we were able to track that back actually to an old sysadmin that, well, not old, he was still working there, but he was on his way out. And I guess he was thinking this is a way to kind of leverage our internal infrastructure. Just specifically, what I'm thinking, what he was trying to do was leverage our API calls to push towards some type of clickbait website. Because the website, the domains that they were replacing one of the API calls with was like some random Eastern European website that was selling like fake. I mean, not fake, but like off-brand like pharmaceuticals,
Yeah.
like. And it wasn't like Viagra. It was more like actual medication. I just can't like not cancer meds, but more like leukemia meds and stuff like that. So it was legitimate. And it was. I'm guessing these guys were getting paid to actually generate traffic for them. So what they were attempting to do was actually change some of the API calls and actually place those inside of that domain and within one of our API configs. But at the time, it would fail because we had proxies in place, and we know we didn't do business in Eastern Europe. So they were constantly trying to figure out how can I switch some type of domain. It was basically a race for them to switch some type of domain that was maybe registered in the U.S. that could sneak past our proxies versus having that domain that was registered in Europe. So as we're doing this and we're segmenting this guy off, it would appear like we block one box and then he would appear on another box. And we're like, well, like we don't see him dumping credits. So how the hell is he moving, or she? How the hell are they moving from box to box? And what we came to find out was like one of the guys that was one of the admins at the time was actually creating the accounts for him. Like he was working in tandem with them. So as we were like navigating and we're shutting down one box and keeping, you know how long it takes to run like forensics, right? You're there at the time. This was like 4 or 5 years back, and we're taking images of the box. We're running a bit of memory analysis. We're going through all this network traffic. We're going through all of our SIM logs, trying to identify like how this individual is pivoting around the network. And one guy was basically giving him like freaking accounts. So when we got close to like catching one, he would basically spin up another one for him, and then basically give him the creds. I don't remember how they were communicating at the time. There was an intel provider that was really helping us out with this stuff, and they were basically monitoring like their chats. And then that's how we were able to. It was so specific in some of their chats, the way they were communicating, that it had to be like inside information. So as we're like chasing this dude or woman, I have no idea who it was. Our guy was like feeding him information and populating accounts for him so he could pivot around the freaking network. So it was basically like he was working against us. Our own guy was working against us, and we were chasing it down. Eventually, we were able to remove that assistant administrator, got human resources involved and legal involved, and we were able to pretty much edge out. When I say edge out, basically we pushed the attacker to the certain part of the network. We left we copied one of the servers that actually had push by API calls. We cut off the network by null routing a lot of the traffic, and then just left them there to die. But at the same time, we were able to populate enough information and hand that over to like the feds at I think over like a 5-week period or something along those lines. Populate and grab enough information, hand that over to the feds, and then the individual that was working with them. I'm not actually sure what happened. I know, law enforcement got involved on his side, so I'd imagine nothing good happened with him. But that was probably by far the most. I mean, I'd done like interesting work from an IR perspective that was challenging, but that was probably the most frustrating because we had someone on our own, inside of our own org, essentially working
Exactly.
against us.
I don't think organizations actually take into consideration how dangerous the insider threat is, because it makes our job so much harder and trying to freaking fight against what's happening internally.
I think when people think inside threat, your mind. Even I'm likely guilty of this also. Like I hear inside threat, I think, okay, this is just someone that's stealing customer data because they're switching jobs or they're stealing whatever it may be. But you're not thinking this could be someone that's essentially helping some group out there like live in your network. Like your mindset doesn't go to that. You're like, why would someone work with criminals? Like you think someone looking out for themselves and taking something like personal or taking customer data so they can move on to the next job and ramp up their sales numbers, but not someone working with like a criminal organization.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that is frustrating is that you guys are trying to look for a sophisticated adversary or necessarily someone that is from outside, but it's all happening within inside the perimeter.
No, most definitely. And I think what was even more I'd say the really frustrating part of it also was like you're deploying these tools and you're taking up cycles, like your team, like networking team, the developing team. Like you have all these cycles you're burning through to kind of snip out this specific attacker, or try to identify what's actually happening. And at the same time, that's like taking them from their normal day-to-day operation too. So if you look at that whole life cycle, they're spending about 3 or 4 hours out of their day helping you out as an incident responder. And then they're falling behind on their projects. You're falling behind on things because obviously this takes priority, but in reality you may have other projects that are going on, so you're falling behind on that. And then when all this is done, all this silliness is done from a person who's basically working against you, now you have to ramp back up and catch up on all those projects you were working on. So it's like this whole life cycle of just like time, like that's not best utilized. I mean, it was great to sniff them out and like figure out what happened. Like that was awesome. But then, the real world comes back the next day and it's like, hey, you have all these things you need to catch up on now because you were doing that.
Exactly. So one of the purposes of the show is to inspire more people to get into DFIR from an early age. I got into it fairly late in my career. Also didn't have any university degrees after school. I only managed to finish my master's recently, but that was at the age of 31. So
Congrats.
thank you very much. It was hard work, but well worth it. But what advice can you give to anyone who's preparing to go into DFIR or thinks that it's an interesting thing to do?
This isn't like to sound like negative. I think you have to have like a certain amount of drive in yourself. Like the best example I can give, right? So say you have like 20 individuals that are going for, we'll say like a SANS cert or something along those lines. But out of the 20, like 2 or 3 of them are like digging in their spare time. They have their lab at home. They're doing their own research. They're reverse engineering malware. They're building out their own indicators of compromise. They're actually looking at indicators of detection. They're building out they're dedicated. They're constantly in it, and they're grinding away like every day, every night. Those 2 out of the 20 likely stand out in a job because they have their own like personal drive. They have that workhorse inside of them that's driving them to be a bit better, right? And when people ask me, and this isn't anything against anyone, but when people ask, well, is there any books you read, or was there like a certification you took to kind of get to where you are? And I'm like, dude, no, I just spend a lot of time researching things. Like I spend probably more time than some of my counterparts, like digging into things and like kind of, because I'm just interested. Like when I got started looking at reverse engineering, it wasn't like I was like, okay, I'm going to go to a reverse engineering course. I just like started running malware inside my lab, and then started understanding more about Windows internals or system architecture, and a little bit of assembly. And I'd ask other people questions, but I just kept digging at it until I got to a point where I felt comfortable like offering analysis. I'm not like one of the best in the world at it by any means. But I know I could at least, with enough time and without any distractions, sit down and kind of reverse a piece of malware, then offer you some type of analysis in conjunction with an incident response summary. And that came from like just wanting to understand it and get better on my own. The piece of advice I would give is, of course, look at education and look at certification bodies, but ensure it's something that you want to do. Like I've run across people that seem to have popped into security just because they know that it's a good field to make money. Like, well, I was told you can make money doing it, like a good amount of salary. And it's like, well, yeah, but are you like passionate about it, or do you care? Because eventually you'll burn out. Like if it's not something, you've done it. It's a lot of work at times.
It's been 12 years for me, so I mean, I'm still around. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's just I need to do something practical. I can go study all the books and read all the things, but I need to put my hands on it and look at it and observe it and learn from it. I'm a practical learner, so as much as I can be book smart as well, I want to be practical smart. And one thing that I'm not scared to do is if someone asks me something and I don't know, I will admit to it and say, you know what, I don't know it this second, but ask me tomorrow because I'm going to go read it up and I'm going to try and figure it out and I'll have an answer for you. Because I think, knowing where you don't know and then learning it is a very strong thing to have in this line of work.
Yeah, I mean, not to sound crass, but I was like, everybody sucks at something. So like the people that tend to thrive are the ones that like know where they're not the best at, like areas they're not the best. Like I know I'm not like web application stuff. That's not me. Like if you ask me about web application, I'll probably point you towards like Brett, or I think he goes by like the Duke on Twitter. Like he's like one of the Boston security guys here. I'd point you in his direction, right? That's something he does, or like my buddy Ori. Like, I'm like, go talk to those guys. Like that's their wheelhouse, right? That's not me. If it's something around like system administration, like I'm decent with understanding like Linux and Windows, but if you need someone to actually stand up boxes and throw your patches out and automate that and go through Docker and go through whatever else, other automation tools, that's someone else. That's not me. Like, but so I'm usually fairly honest with myself. I'm like, I don't understand it. Give me like a couple of days and I'll look into it and I'll come back with an answer. But right now I don't. Go talk to those people. But at the same time, just being honest about like where it's a mental thing that you're like, okay, well, I should look into that, right? Like if something triggers in your brain, some type of chemical reaction where I don't know, but now I'm curious, so I'm gonna go look into it versus just, yeah, I know that, and you brush it off, like, yeah, I know that, okay, yeah, what do you want? Like that type of thinking. Like I'm not a big fan of working with people that kind of come off know-it-alls. Like, yeah, I know that. I know all the things. I know all the Twitters. Like I know everything.
No, I definitely don't know everything. There's so much. Don't ever ask me to put code into production because most likely my code will be bad. I'm not the best at writing code. I can read it fairly well. I'm good at reading it, but building stuff, not so much my strong suit.
That's how I feel. I was joking around earlier. I was like, I'm just at the point in life where this is my company now. Like when I'm building things, I'm like, I hope I don't break something, because there's no one to turn to because it's like me.
O'Shea broke the internet. Coming to cinemas soon.
Right. And his company went under. Hopefully not. I'm joking.
No, it won't. Now, what do you do to relax? To take that 5 minutes to yourself when the DFI world or the InfoSec world just gets too noisy.
So I'm in Boston. So I'm in the Northeast in the U.S. And one of the things, well, it's summer here right now. But in the winter, I snowboard. Like I snowboard a lot. The closest mountain is Wachusett, and it's like maybe about an hour and 20 minute drive for me. And being that I work from home sometimes, around like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, I can just drive up there and get in time for like a night session. Or on the weekends, a lot of the individuals in the Boston security community snowboard and ski also. So we get together at times on the weekends and we go to Vermont or New Hampshire and we'll go board there. During the winter, I snowboard a decent amount of time. Outside of that, I do try to meditate at least like once a day. When things get like pretty hectic, usually I have an 18-month-old daughter, so I kind of just like shut down and just go hang out with her. Not to say I don't spend my time with my daughter, but what I found is like if I just unplug for a bit of time and just take my mind totally elsewhere. And if you have a child, especially a young child, they're so rambunctious that your mind will float to something else if you're with them. So I'll usually just go unplug and go for like a walk with my daughter or something like that, or go play with her in the backyard, and then that just takes my mind off of whatever is frustrating me at that moment regarding like security.
Oh no, definitely. I must say, everyone that I speak with, it seems that we find that pleasure in our children. And I mean, she's only 18 months. My two little daughters are 5 and 9. I'm turning 9. Nicola's turning 9. And you got some time, buddy. Better get ready.
Yeah.
It only gets more exciting.
It's like exciting means trouble.
It does, especially if you have a girl. I've realized, sometimes what will happen is she'll say something and, first thing is like, wow, she's like truly my daughter. And then realizing, oh, wait, I need to parent here. This is a parenting moment,
I'm supposed to be the example. Like I'm the example. I shouldn't be laughing at her behavior. Yeah, my daughter definitely does things I don't know. I try not to laugh at, and then they see you laugh and they think it's okay. It's like she breaks magnets from our refrigerator. Like we have a refrigerator of like magnets from like all the places we visited in the world and in the U.S. But like she broke the Vienna one like a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh my god, my wife's gonna freak out. And when she broke it, she had this look on her face like she knew she messed up, but then she like kind of smiled, and then I smiled. It's like, okay, never mind, and then she walks away. And I was like, what just happened? Like I think she just Jedi mind tricked me.
Exactly, that is precisely what's happened. Now, I take it from your name, you're a pretty big Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I love Star Wars. Well, it's actually odd. Someone asked about the name on like on Twitter. I go by Sir Mudblood, and like the Mudblood reference is like a Harry Potter like reference for like half magical, half like human.
Yes.
But then other things, yeah, it's usually Obi-Wan. But also, it works out perfectly because my name is O'Shea Bowens, so it's just my initials and then the one. So it's like it's almost like George Lucas lined this up to be like
Exactly.
Obi-Wan.
So does that mean that you're not really on the dark side of things, but more on the light side of things?
I think it's a bit better to live in the light.
So I
And also,
always,
even if from a security perspective, it's easier to talk and share and be open if you're doing non-shady things. Like if you ever hung out on forums where there's like people doing, we'll say shady stuff. Everyone's distrustful of everyone, like especially in chat rooms or some IRC channels.
mm,
Like everyone's like, that guy's a cop, or you're probably a fed, or this guy's a rat. Like it's like everyone's like super paranoid about what they're doing, and it's like, but if you're just doing normal things like a career, like an infosec career, or you're a security practitioner, it's a lot more easier to talk about what's going on and what you're working on and what you're and maybe asking for help or collaborating.
well, so now, seeing as you're a Harry Potter fan, which house?
Right, Gryffindor.
Oh man, you're such a geek. I'm more Slytherin and I'm more for the Empire, but I mean,
Yeah,
see, I
I
am
think I
often called Darth V.
did you say Dark V or Darth V?
Darth V.
Oh, huh.
Huh.
You should make like a logo out of that.
I should actually, but I always joke with people. I say, "Come to the dark side. We have cookies, bits, bites, and nibbles." Yeah, I'm very, very, very goofy in that regard. But no, I'm also a big Star Wars fan. Um, so I just want to thank you for entertaining my whims and questions today and sharing your story with everyone. So tell me one funny thing that happened in your career where you had a moment that you had to sit back and say, I cannot believe what I've just done.
Uh, I, this is like a pretty short story. Basically, at one point, I was working an incident, and I think I was just tired. Like this is one of those things about taking care of yourself. I was very tired, and I was writing. I had this running Excel form of different URLs that I was meant to investigate. So it probably had about 12 different URLs, and I think these are like different URLs the attackers were leveraging for their infrastructure. And I accidentally uploaded that onto a certain website to research URLs. I was just tired. Like I didn't mean that. It was like one of those things. I was so tired, and once I clicked it, it triggered off a decent amount of alerts from our SIM because we were monitoring output from this specific website. So if anyone were actually to query some of the URLs that we were searching for, it would actually produce an alert for us. And I uploaded all of our OPSEC in like one spelled shot by accident because I was up for like I was up for a long time at this point. I was super tired, and accidentally uploaded like half of our OPSEC or in research on this particular person we were tracking. And pretty much gave away the cake at that point. Like once that was done, I'm pretty sure that guy was monitoring it because he went silent afterwards. Like a lot of the activity that we were looking at just kind of fell off the face of the earth. And I had to I just had to eat it really in front of the team and to my manager. I was like, listen, I screwed up massively, but I've been out for like over 24 hours straight. Like I haven't been home, I haven't slept. It was crazy embarrassing. So that's one piece of advice I will say. Like when you're tired, go to
Yes.
sleep. Like you're not gonna do anything awesome when you're not thinking clearly because you haven't slept.
Well, look, we've all done it. If I always say, if you haven't imaged your own machine instead of a suspect machine, you haven't lived in DFIR yet. I mean, I have done that very early in my career, and I mean, I now check always and make sure that I'm not tired because I've done some stupid things. And that's what I say to everyone. We need to also look after ourselves because DFIR folk, we bad at that. We're always on the chase.
Yeah, I think you want to. Yeah, it's like it goes that workhorse inside of you. Like you thinking your ego. Everybody has an ego. I don't care what you say. Everyone has an ego, and that ego is telling you you can get this done. Just keep going. Just keep going. And then it's 24 hours have passed, and you haven't really slept. You haven't been eating. You're just not thinking clearly. Like all science shows, if you're not eating regularly, you're not hydrated, you're not sleeping. Like it affects your brain. So you need all three of those things every day.
Definitely no. But yeah, thank you very much, and you must have a fantastic day. Your morning's only starting. Mine's busy wrapping up. It's weekend. So I will chat to you again in a follow-up, maybe do a technical segment.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, have a fantastic day.
Yeah, you also.
Okay, cheers, eh?